And I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. And thank you to the witnesses for taking the time. We really, really sincerely appreciate it. Mr. Lieberman, the one big beautiful bill phases out the IRA and its harmful green energy subsidies. While phasing these subsidies out, I think is a great start. I think ideally we'd repeal these immediately. We ran on repealing the Green New Deal. Every single Republican ran on repealing the Green New Deal. I think it's about time that we actually execute on that promise. Can you elaborate on the importance of repealing IRA green energy subsidies?
Yes, the same army of lobbyists that gave us the Inflation Reduction Act will be back whenever those phase-out deadlines come, asking for extensions. I was on the Hill for several years. I had dozens and dozens of meetings with lobbyists for subsidized alternative energy companies, always asking for more, raising the caps, extending the deadlines. It never happened that one of them came to me and said, we're not an infant industry anymore, you can end the subsidies. There's always a demand for more, and it's very tough to stop these things, as you know full well. There's so many must-pass bills that these things can be slipped into every year. So phasing them out is really not phasing them out. So repeal would be far and away the best option.
Yep, government handouts are like a drug. Once you give them out, it's very, very hard to pull them back. And we've seen the army of K Street descending upon Washington to keep these handouts in place. Could you just help us understand a little bit more about how much we might be able to save by repealing the Green New Deal?
Well, I think Dr. McBride has the numbers a little bit better than me, but it's certainly well into the hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of reduced tax credits and other subsidies. And then there's the additional effects. So many of the favored energy sources and technologies have problems of their own that will impose costs. So best to stop these bad ideas in the bud.
Right. Could you walk us through how some of these subsidies have distorted the energy market?
Well, for example, when wind and solar are very heavily subsidized, that's what's going to be built. But and that's fine on a sunny day, on a day where the wind is blowing at an ideal speed. But there will be those times where you need backup power. But there's no incentive really for that backup power. Who wants to spend on a natural gas plant that has to sit idle and yield to wind and solar and only turn on and be able to sell energy for those moments where a blackout needs to be avoided? It's not a winning economic business model, and that's, I think, something that's true throughout the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't ban gasoline-powered vehicles. It doesn't ban natural gas facilities, but it so heavily subsidizes the alternatives that it greatly discourages these things, and as you say, it distorts the markets.
Have you seen similar dynamics where Washington began spending money or doling taxpayer dollars out to different private entities or special interests, and then once we tried to pull them back, you saw that same dynamic of special interests lobbying Washington to keep their handouts in place?
Well, you see it in the Inflation Reduction Act itself. Many of the tax credits were ones that in some cases began in the 1990s and have been extended many, many times. So there's a long history of these tax credits. Once they're established and once there's a concentrated group of companies that benefit from them, they're going to lobby hard to keep them. So yeah, there's a long history of it being difficult to ever phase something out unless you repeal it when the opportunity arises.
Yep. And Democrats love to claim that these subsidies benefit working class Americans. We have IRS data that found that $5.5 billion of the approximately $8.4 billion in tax credit claims doled out for residential energy tax credits came from filers earning more than $100,000 a year annually. I'd love to hear your opinion. Again, do you believe that these tax credits benefit wealthy Americans at the expense of our working class?
The priorities in the Inflation Reduction Act are simply not the priorities of most working Americans. The bottom 60% of households take advantage of 10% of the tax credits. And with regard to something like electric vehicles, keep in mind upwards of 40% of American households are single vehicle households. They either don't want or most likely can't afford multiple vehicles. Ask yourself, does an EV really can it really be that one go-to vehicle? And the answer is no. Upwards of 90% of EVs are part of multi-vehicle and wealthier families. And a lot is true of many of these other subsidized appliances and other things that just don't make sense for most working folks, which is why they needed to be subsidized.
Yep. Thank you,